This man's name is David. He is a young politician who wants to run for the United States election. That morning, David began his campaign. His opponent, Roger Lindfield, said, "I'm going to knock on every door and take over the city that way. But it doesn't matter, because when November comes, today I want to give them a warning. This city doesn't belong to them. People often say that young people don't care about politics, that they don't vote. But who really makes the difference?" David's campaign after campaign was a huge success. The provisional vote count showed that David was ahead of all his political opponents. However, when the election was halfway through and victory seemed closer, suddenly his past surfaced. An old case about his fight in a bar was spread on the TV news. The public began to doubt and considered David not mature enough to lead. The reputation he had worked so hard to build was destroyed by dirty political competition. David began to despair. A few days after the voting ended, on the roof of a building, a group of secret organizations gathered to discuss David's fate. They seemed to have known that David would lose. The head of the organization, Richardson, then ordered one of his members named Harry to repair David's reputation. Richardson wanted David to run again in the next election. The next morning, at the office, when he found out that the vote count results showed his crushing defeat, David felt weak. Before giving a speech in front of his supporters, he practiced first in the toilet. Although sad to accept defeat, he tried to stay strong. In the middle of the practice, suddenly a beautiful woman appeared. The woman's name was Ellis. Ellis was a professional dancer. When he met her and saw her beauty, David immediately fell in love at first sight. While they were talking, for some reason David's enthusiasm suddenly returned. However, in the middle of their conversation, David's assistant named Charlie came in and told him to start his speech immediately. Ellis hurriedly left. The brief meeting made David curious. During his speech in front of all his supporters, David told the story of his struggle with the campaign team, from the beginning of the campaign until the election ended. Even though he lost, he refused to give up. David promised to improve himself and run again in the next election. Hearing that, all his supporters cheered to support him. 1 month passed. At dawn, when Harry was watching David in the city park, Richardson came to him. He ordered that at 7:05, when David left for work, Harry had to make David spill his coffee before getting on the bus. Anyway, today David must not get on the bus on time. Not long after, exactly at 7:05, David had just left for work while carrying a glass of coffee. However, Harry fell asleep on the bus. When he saw Ellis, David was shocked. He didn't expect to meet her again. David then sat next to Ellis. When Ellis arrived at her destination, before parting, David dared to ask for her phone number. Ellis happily gave it to him. When he arrived at the office, one by one his staff looked busy. However, when he entered the meeting room, David saw Richardson and his members pressing Charlie's head. When he came to, David was confused as to why he was in an empty building with people in black coats. Richardson then introduced himself. He came from an organization tasked with maintaining the flow of human destiny. The reason David was there was because he had deviated from the flow of his destiny. David should have been late for the bus this morning. After explaining at length, because David already knew everything, Richardson asked David to keep his mouth shut. If he revealed the existence of this organization, all his memories and thoughts would be erased, so that he would become like a crazy person before being sent home, so that David would not have a relationship with Ellis again. Richardson took Ellis' phone number and burned it. David could only say istighfar. The next day, At the bar, while David was trying to remember Ella's number, Harry came over and started chatting with him. "I'll tell you everything this afternoon," Harry said. That evening, on the ship, Harry explained that his organization only had one mission, which was to guide humans to continue walking according to destiny. He understood that David really wanted to meet Ellis again, but believe me, it was all in vain. You two are not meant to be together. No matter how hard you try, Richardson will definitely separate you. Besides, there are 9 million people in this city, you can't possibly find Ellis. It's better to just give up, Harry said. Hearing that, David fell silent and pondered. 3 years passed. Even though he had been reminded, it turned out that David still didn't want to give up. In order to meet Ellis again, almost every day, at the same time, he always went to work on the same bus, until one day, accidentally, he saw Ellis walking. David rushed after her. When they met, he immediately apologized. While walking together, David explained how he had struggled for the past 3 years to find Ellis. At first, Ellis was upset because David never called her at all, even though she had given him her number. However, after David explained at length that the number was lost, Ellis finally believed him. The two of them then continued their conversation at the cafe. On the other hand, when Richardson found out that David and Ellis had managed to meet, he panicked. He immediately rushed to separate them. In an instant, just by passing through a door, Richardson arrived at David's location. From a distance, Richardson and his men checked the Book of Destiny while making plans to separate them. However, suddenly in the Book of Destiny it was written that David and Ellis would kiss. Richardson panicked even more. If they kissed, David would deviate even further from his destiny. He then ordered his men to lure Charlie here. Not long after, as planned, Charlie arrived. Because today there was a speech schedule, Charlie told David to leave right away. Like it or not, David obeyed. Before parting, Ellis asked David to make an appointment to meet after the speech. Coincidentally, today she had a dance practice schedule across the river, near the location of David's speech. Initially, Richardson was relieved because his plan was a success. Suddenly David kissed Ella's cheek. Richardson immediately said istighfar. After parting, David began to give a speech in front of his supporters. After finishing his speech, David accidentally saw Richardson watching him from a distance. Because he realized Richardson was planning something, David rushed to Ella's practice location. Unfortunately, he was too late. It turned out that the practice location had been moved to another place. For the sake of his crush, David didn't want to give up. He tried to find information about other dance practice places around there. While looking for information by phone, Richardson continued to thwart all his calls. Even though Richardson had tried to reprimand him and forbid him from meeting Ellis, David still didn't care. Because David kept insisting, Richardson was forced to cause the taxi he was riding in to have an accident. David panicked. After calling the police, instead of giving up, the boy stopped another taxi. When he found out that David had managed to get a taxi, now it was Richardson's turn to panic. Alhamdulillah, David managed to find Ellis. Richardson was weak. Now, David had really strayed far from his destiny. Disappointed, Richardson left them at the headquarters while analyzing David's case. Because this was a special case, the superior planned to replace Richardson with another officer who was more expert in love matters. The officer's name was Thompson. He was so great, he said that Thompson could solve love problems without having to make any effort at all. On the other hand, after finishing practice, David and Ellis went home together, then stopped by a disco. After the party, while walking home, the two of them talked and got to know each other better. Because they felt they were compatible, That night they officially started dating. The next morning, when she just woke up, Ellis was confused why her ex suddenly called and asked her to meet. David, who was staying there, accidentally overheard Ellis' conversation. To avoid any misunderstandings, Ellis immediately explained that she and her ex had broken up a long time ago. It was strange, after months, this was the first time her ex had called again. Ellis also said that she had been engaged before, but because she kept thinking about David, she cancelled the engagement and chose to wait for David. Hearing that, David promised that no matter what happened, he would never leave Ellis again. Ellis was touched. Oh yes, because Ellis had a dance performance today, David promised that later, after returning from the TV interview, he would come to watch it. That afternoon, after the interview, David was escorted to the break room by the staff. However, without realizing it, he was suddenly in the empty building where he had been arrested. Panicking, he tried to find a way out. Not long after, Thompson appeared and introduced himself. Because he was fed up with being blocked, David asked for an explanation as to why he could not be with Ellis. Thompson explained that David was actually destined to be president. His parents, siblings, relatives, and even the entire community had placed high hopes on him. Don't let a woman destroy their hopes, said Thompson. If you are with Ellis, your destiny will change, and you will fail to become president. However, David remained stubborn. For him, destiny was not the end. He would never give up and woe. That night, David attended Ellis' performance. In the middle of the performance, Thompson appeared and said that in the future, Ellis would become a famous dancer. Thompson reminded him that if David persisted, Ellis' future could change. She would only become an ordinary dance teacher. It may sound bitter, said Thompson, but sometimes, love can destroy our ideals. Hearing that, David began to reflect. As a warning, with his strength, Thompson made Ellis fall and get injured. Ellis was rushed to the hospital. At the hospital, while David was waiting for the doctor's examination results, Thompson appeared again. Annoyed, David immediately hit him. Thompson then said, "Now maybe Ellis only has a sprain. But if you continue to force your will, she could get hurt worse than this." David was then faced with a dilemma. After contemplating for a long time, David finally approached and hugged Ellis while saying, "Trust me, one day, you will definitely become a great dancer, very great." Unable to say goodbye, David remained silent, then left the woman he loved so much. Seeing her lover's attitude, Ellis realized David would definitely disappear again. Like before, 8 months passed. One day, David was seen campaigning for the election that would be held next month. After the speech, Charlie showed a newspaper story about a successful dancer in New York City. The dancer's name was Ellis. When he found out that Ellis would be getting married tomorrow, David's heart was broken. That evening, David calmed down at the bar. When he was about to order a drink, the waiter gave him a letter from Harry. In the letter, Harry invited David to meet in the pouring rain in a warehouse. When they met, Harry said, "Actually, Thompson has been lying all this time. Ella's future will not change even if you two are together." However, Thompson lied for the sake of good. He only wanted David to focus on building his future and not be too busy with women. David was confused. "Why did you tell me?" he asked. Harry replied, "Actually, I also don't agree that humans should surrender to fate. Unlike the fate of death that cannot be changed, the fate of life can still be fought for. I just want to guide humans so that they can live according to their own choices." After knowing the truth, David still hoped and did not want the woman he loved to marry another man. He asked Harry to help him pick up Ellis. At first, Harry was hesitant. But because the boy kept insisting, Harry was forced to reveal the secret of his organization. He said, "Our organization's weakness is rain. When it rains, you can't be caught. Harry also taught David how to teleport through doors. The key is just wearing a hat, he explained. If you wear the hat, you can teleport anywhere you want. If you turn the doorknob to the right, you will move to your destination. If to the left, you will move to the organization's headquarters. Harry then told David to memorize the route to the church, where Ellis would get married tomorrow. On the other hand, Ellis was seen trying to calm her mind by dancing. Ellis was indeed getting married tomorrow. However, deep down, she still really hoped for David. The next morning, the wedding day arrived. Luckily, it happened to be raining that morning. David immediately put on his hat. Meanwhile, in another place, when he found out that David was heading to Ella's place, Thompson and his men rushed after him. David managed to find Ellis in the toilet. While out of breath, David kept apologizing. Sorry for leaving you again. He begged, please cancel this wedding. In the middle of the conversation, Thompson's men came in. Luckily, David won the fight. Seeing Ellis scared, David tried to explain everything while taking her away. Under the Statue of Liberty, David was confused about where else to run. Suddenly, he got an idea. Rather than continuing to run away, it would be better for him to meet the author of his Destiny book directly. Before leaving, David gave Ellis a choice. I will go to the headquarters alone, but the two of us will never be able to meet again forever. Or you come with me and we fight together. Although we don't know if this method will work, the most important thing is that we have fought for our love, he said. Hearing the crazy idea, Ellis chose to come along. The two of them then opened the door to the headquarters together. When David entered, Harry panicked because he had also leaked the organization's secret by telling David how to teleport to the headquarters. Harry was then told to face the chairman, or highest leader. Meanwhile, David and Ellis ended up lost on the roof of the building. Because they were surrounded by Thompson's men, they both gave up. Before parting forever, David and Ellis kissed. Strangely, suddenly everyone disappeared. In the midst of the confusion, Thompson appeared from behind, wanting to erase their memories. Luckily, Harry arrived just in time. He also brought David's newly rewritten Destiny. Because Harry brought a direct order from the highest leader, Thompson was forced to give in and leave. Harry then showed the new Destiny paper, while explaining, the head of the organization was touched by your struggles. So he decided to rewrite your destiny, David, Harry said. Now, you are given the freedom to determine your own path in life. Hearing the news, David and Ellis were very happy. When they walked home hand in hand, they met members of the organization. Unknowingly, David's story had inspired them all. They just found out that destiny can be changed. It may be hard and requires strong determination, but it can still be changed.